Well, another injury. So Carlton star Sam Walsh, the headline yesterday, faces a stint on the sidelines, a hamstring strain. It happened on Monday, as we said earlier. Scans later confirming the extent of the strain. So they expect him to be sidelined for about a month, but just hopeful they can get him back into some sort of training program in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And at this stage, of course, expected to be fully fit for Richmond on March 13. But look, this is a club and this is a player. This is not their first rodeo, Kane Corns. And in fact, one of the replies to Carlton's post on X was scheduled tweet, which I had to laugh at. Some fans posted scheduled tweet underneath. So Charlie Curnow's knee clean-up is getting there. There were some early grumbles with that, I'm told, and it was taking some time, but he's just about there. But, gee, Sam Walsh, who's had a second interrupted preseason in a row, missed the opening 5 weeks of last season with the back injury. He's had the back injury again in 2022. He's had soft tissue hamstring strains in the past as well. Geez, hamstrings at Carlton, though, they're like the beach in summer. They just go together, Kane.
Yeah, and look, so you go back and you look at, the changes that they have made, moved on from Andrew Russell. Rob Innes comes in, former Sydney high-performance boss, to oversee this and clearly try and rectify the issues that have probably cost them, well, a shot at a premiership, really. When you look at the strength of this squad, the fact that they are ready to go, the way that they have recruited, it's been the real Achilles heel for them. And towards the back end of last year, it just became comical how many A-grade players or first-choice players were out of that side. Just looking at their injury report, you touched on a couple of those, but Jack Silvani, of course, coming back from the knee. Blake Acres is a back, and always get nervous with backs, as Sam Walsh has probably shown over the last couple of years. They're saying he'll be integrated back into the program this month. You've got Walsh, you've got Curnow, you mentioned Chincotta, not ready until the start of the 2025 season, and Cottrell's got a shoulder as well, starting to come back in January as well. But Brad Lloyd said that they will review the whole of the medical department at the end of last season, and that would be one of the main points in terms of their off-season review, and look at everything that they're doing, the training program, the way that they have recruited. I know Andrew Russell has said that a lot of the injuries were from players that had come from other clubs, so they're going to look at that. But I don't want to overreact to a hamstring injury, because this will happen. This will happen.
It's just a hammy.
This will happen at most clubs, and particularly in the summer as well, when you start to ramp up your loads. But Walsh is an interesting test case, and the way that they have, I think they've worn Sam Walsh into the ground. When you look at his size and his stature, I don't think the way that he plays is designed to go to 85% of centre bounces. It's just not. Now, Jagger Smith comes in, Camporelli twins come in. They would hope that Holland's boys spend some more time inside, but it's been Cripps and Walsh that have carried this midfield on their shoulders for far too long, and they need to start looking after Sam Walsh, because he's 6 years in. Like, this guy should have another 10 with the way that he plays. He should be more of an outside player, Sam Walsh, than he is inside. Right now, you look at his breakdown. He does so much heavy lifting inside, and he's a small midfielder when you look at the way that midfielders are built these days. So they need to look after this guy. Otherwise, he had 30 Brownlow medal votes in his third year, I think it was, Sam Walsh, and he looks like he's going to take this competition by storm. Next captain of the footy club. Since then, it's been hard going. He hasn't missed a lot of footy, to be fair, because he comes back in and he's actually, without a pre-season, his performances have been excellent, but at some point that's going to take a toll. And when you get one hammy, you start to get another, and the biggest indication of soft tissue injuries is age, and if you've done them before. And now they're starting to build up with the back issues that have been really serious for him. So this footy club has got to look after Sam Walsh. He's 24 years of age. Well,
he's a star. I mean, he's a player of the finals 2023, so you don't have to go back too far.
We know how good he is, but how good's he going to be?
Small? We don't know weights anymore, but I reckon he's mid-80 kilos and he's 6 foot in the old. So he's 184 centimetres.
I think that's a small midfielder now.
By modern day standards, it is, yeah. But he's no shrinking violet.
No, but anyway, but you can't protect him from him. Like, you're going to have to protect him from himself, because he's really courageous. Mark of the year, that mark that he took a couple of seasons ago, is evidence of that. He's a contested player. He needs to become. It's like the discussion I have with Matt Rao. Like, Gold Coast got to look after Matt Rao, because you want him doing what he's doing in 5-6 years' time. It's brutal the way that he plays. Now, Walsh doesn't play exactly the same as Rao, but his contested ball winning ability is excellent. They've got to make him more of a damaging player centre forward. Look at the change that Harry Sheasel has made for North Melbourne centre forward. That's what I'd love to see Sam Walsh develop into. He kicked 5 goals last year, Sam Walsh. He's kicked 5, 6, 5 goals. Can he be more of a influential player centre forward? That's only going to happen if Carlton look after him. But Blues fans, you've got a new high performance boss. Seems to be this type of update, as the Carlton fans have recognised at this time every year. And it's not an insignificant hammy. Like it's a 4-weeker. So he's gone bang and he's done it. It's not a 1 or 2 weeker. And we'll see how that affects him. But I just think they need to start looking after their absolute star players, and that has to happen this year.
Yep. Off the text, Sam Walsh gets injured after the new year for the 3rd year in a row. The disclaimer, as you mentioned, is that, there's injuries right across the comp at the moment because they're revving the engine up. Petrarca's got another cracked rib. Nick Dacos has got plantar fasciitis. Jordan De Goey's had groin issues. Todd Marshall's ruptured his Achilles, for heaven's sake. So it happens, of course, but it's the same player and the same club. So Rob Innes comes in. Now, it's bigger than one man, but Andrew Russell was seen to be not the scapegoat, but the man. He'd been there for so long. He was easy to blame. Jake Russell, what's going on down there? And the injuries were happening at training sessions last year, which I think was the straw that broke the camel's back, is you had players who were fine on a Saturday, and then the word would come out on a Wednesday that they'd done their hamstrings at training. Now, he joined us in December, Andrew Russell. This is myself and Cameron Mooney on this show, SEN Breakfast, and we got onto the subject of injuries in his final year at the Blues, and this is what he had to say, particularly around the rehabbing of Carlton players.
And there was a little bit as well for me, like the leadership structure that Carlton set up meant that I actually didn't have a huge influence over a lot of those issues. I wasn't involved in a lot of the rehab of a lot of these players. So once I got in, which is the way the club set it up. So that was a bit, disappointing that I couldn't have more of an influence on some of those guys. But I was, I was the one in the hot seat. I was the one that sort of copped some of the criticism for it. But so in the end, I focused on the healthy group, working with Bossy and working with Ash and working with the coaches on that healthy group.
So I'm not sure if you heard that.
No, I didn't hear it. I read it. How was it received? What was the response?
Predictably, people weren't willing to buy that. That wouldn't be a shock to you. People off the text in real time, my memory of it was, well, come on, mate. At least take ownership. The buck, whether fair or unfair, the buck has to stop with you because of the title and the hat that you wore. Now, what he's saying might be completely true, that over time, I read into that, and maybe the Blues lost faith in him. And then, therefore, once his power base eroded, then you had a situation where, you had a split in responsibilities. But he was, I thought, brave enough to admit it. Now, a lot of people wouldn't in that situation, I feel.
Yeah,
because nothing can be gained, can it?
I'm a bit biased on this. I'm seat 1A on the Andrew Russell aeroplane.
So you'd be prepared to call it out?
I'm a card-carrying Andrew Russell fan. And his biggest strength was that he was a jack of all trades. Like, he was a psychologist. He was a masseuse. He was the one that put the program together. He was a dietitian. He knew everything about everything, and he loved that. So once you start removing elements of his strengths away, if that was the case, now there'll be two sides to this story. The Carlton will have their view on it as well, and he will have his. But it will be just interesting now to follow, because a lot of the blame was on Andrew Russell, and that's fair enough because that's your role. It's like an AFL coach. Like, when it comes to win-loss, the buck stops with you. There's other factors that go into it, I'm sure, but it will just be, and we won't have the answers for it now, but have Carlton solve these issues by removing Andrew Russell? I'm not certain that will be the case. Brad Lloyd said in September, we do need to sort that out. We can't have a season on season when we're not having full squads available. We need to have as many players play every game. That's obvious, but we'll look at it pretty closely and make any adjustments we can. Obviously, Rob is a major appointment for the club. He's coming in with strong backgrounds from Richmond and Sydney. We look forward to working with him once Sydney's season is over. Well, that's happening now, and already, only a couple of weeks back from Christmas, you've got your star player popping a hammy and missing 4 weeks. So, yeah, it's going to be another storyline developing at the Blues with Andrew Russell now gone, and the pressure that's building on the footy club to win a premiership.
It's a big, big year. I think from memory, one of the other things he said was also that the players you get are the players that you get. And you touched on this earlier, but he said some of the trading that the Blues have done in the off-season will automatically water down that injury rate. And I think he's referring to the likes of Jack Martin and the guys who
so that's another one to follow as well. Like
haven't been at
another club.
No, those guys are, because they're the ones that are at real risk of coming back to haunt their previous clubs, aren't they? But I'm not sure. Jack Martin, unfortunately for him, just hasn't been able to get his body right for years and years and years, pretty much the entirety of his career. So if Geelong can somehow crack the code there, then you'd just shake your head, wouldn't you? But it's a fascinating space.
So we've done this a little bit. What's a pass mark for Carlton this year?
I think it's got to be a Final Four, doesn't it? It's got to be a prelim. Get back to where you were before last year's horror show.
Definitely, yeah. It's got to be a competitive prelim. And as we said, I think on Monday, when we were speaking about Fremantle, what's a pass mark? Well, it's prelim final. And I said, well, there's probably 8 teams that's your pass mark. So clearly not everyone is going to get there. But a high pass mark for the Blues with this squad is to genuinely be challenging in the last couple of weeks of the season.
I think so. Yep.
Yeah.
I think so. There's a question here for you on Fremantle, actually, just as we get to the break. One for you to ponder maybe for later on in the show. Kane, you seem to have a newfound love for the Western Bulldogs. I wouldn't quite go that far. But this text is saying Treacy and Amiss will kick more goals than Ugle-Hagan and Darcy combined this season. Yet the Western Bulldogs players get the bigger raps. Treacy and Amiss will be the best 1-2 key forward combination for the next decade.
I like that. I love that text. I love strong opinions. I love people putting themselves out there. And you and I did a segment called Hold Me To It last year. So that text there,
and you've held me to it for 12 months.
I reckon that goes into the category of hold me to it. So I want to do this over the next, week or so, and just refreshing your memory. I did say hold me to it. Nick Kyrgios would never get inside the top 30 ever again.
Ever again. Was it 30?
30, yep.
Yeah, it was 30.
So that's a good one. What was it? Amiss and Treacy
to kick more goals than Ugle-Hagan and Darcy.
What was his name?
No name.
Send us your name.
Unfortunately, no name. 037. We can actually. This is a good call, Kane, because we put our head on the block this time last year. Listener, you put your head on the block.
Give us your name.
Give us your hold me to it, and maybe we'll do that as the month unfolds.
That's a perfect hold me to it.
Don't mind it. We're in the Kogan studio today. Kogan Mobile's got you covered. 140 gigs for $119 to use across 12 months. Kogan.com. Click and awesome. Actually, last year, Brooks is telling me, Amiss 32 goals, Treacy 42 goals. Just Darcy wouldn't have kicked anywhere near that. We just might need the comparison with the Western Bulldogs as well. So we'll see what sort of base.
What side would you be on of that?
I think I'd gravitate to the Dockers. I just feel like the way they're set up, I reckon more goals will go through them than the Dogs. I reckon the Dogs. I reckon the Dogs have got a more balanced front 50, to be honest. Sam Darcy's kicked 38 goals, more than I thought, actually, last year. And he's coming like a rocket.
Could he go 60?
And 43 for Jamara.
Darcy's capable of going 60. I'm going my Dogs.
Well, actually, the Dogs have outshot them.
I'm going with my, because Norton won't give you much.
No, all right. Why do you have to slip that in there? You go.
Just
so there you go, 037. The love affair's over.
He's the most overhyped player that we have in the game. So we know he will not. I think Darcy and Ugle-Hagan, I'll go with them.
Well, he kicked 35 with a dodgy knee last year, Aaron Norton, so I wouldn't be too dismissive of him just yet. But anyway, Sam Darcy 38, Jamara 43 last year, Amiss 32, Treacy 42. It's close, but Amiss kicked 32-28. So if he straightens up the bow and arrow...
He used to be accurate, Amiss.
A bit more of a closer look at this matchup here, Kane. They hold me to it. So Jamara's kicked 43-35. Goodness knows how many shots failed to score at all. 22 games. Darcy 38-23 from 21 games. And as J-Dog points out, he kicked 38 goals from 28 games. Sam Darcy is a forward ruck. He's not even a full-time forward like Treacy or Amiss. Amiss has kicked 36-28 from 22 games. Treacy 45-15. Shot the lights out from 20 games. So it's completely even.
So you're still with the Dockers?
Don't know if I am, to be honest. But Treacy's coming with a bullet, I reckon. To kick 45 from 20, the ceiling's massive for him. But then again, on the other two, the ceiling couldn't be higher either. So from the Western Bulldogs. So it's a great one. And look at all the hold me to it's coming through at the moment. Steve from Botanic Ridge. I've got a strong Carlton bias, but you can hold me to this. The Hornet Jason Corn-Francis will be a Brownlow medalist this year. That is a massive hold me to it, Steve.
That's a big hold me to it.
Huge, and they're pouring
Put
through.
some money on that responsibly if you're confident.
Harry Sheezer will be top 3 in the Brownlow, says Drew in Healesville. That's a bit more circumspect, but might be a bit more realistic. I'm not sure, but keep those texts coming through.
Ian says, Kane, is this a sign that you're getting behind the Dogs this year instead of our mighty Hawks? I hope you haven't left the Hawks bandwagon. Ian, my Hawks and our Hawks, I'm still right on board. Melbourne are fascinating this year, aren't they? For so many reasons. Petrarca, Oliver, all of that. Goodwin, game plan. I think Melbourne, for me, are one of the more fascinating stories of the whole year. And you chuck in Kozzie Pickett now, just reading the story in the West Australian back page of their paper this morning. Melbourne star Kozzie Pickett looks set to join Fremantle after the 2025 season, sources have told the West Australian. He's been linked there for a while. The article goes on and on and then. But essentially they're saying something would have to go drastically wrong for Kozzie Pickett not to be at Fremantle next year. There's a lot of smoke around this story.
There has been.
Do you agree with the West Australian suggestion that it's almost guaranteed that he'll be at Fremantle?
No. I don't know how you can say that. I mean, so this story's been around, quote unquote, story since late 2022, when it was actually Port Adelaide who thought they were a real chance. In fact, if you spoke to them at the time, privately, they would have said,
you broke this story. What was the reaction?
No, well, Melbourne were then confident. They were always really confident. And I think what we've learned in the last few years is that Kozzie, look, and in more recent times, he actually told Simon Goodwin after the exit interview last season that he might be feeling the pull from home and a bit homesick or a bit unsettled. He's always loved the Melbourne Footy Club. He hasn't necessarily loved Melbourne, the city. So that's nothing new. As I said, it was Port Adelaide again as recently as last year. They thought they might have been a chance to get him. Fremantle, he's close with a few players at the Dockers, is my understanding, Kozzie Pickett. There was some social catch-ups last year as well. I think Shea Bolton was one of them. And, you talk and you say, mate, you should come over and play at Fremantle too. And I think that's essentially where a lot of the smoke has started. And Michael Walters is involved. And, Kozzie's keen on getting back. And then it sort of snowballs from there. When it comes to the crunch, though, he's always stayed. I mean, he's contracted until 2027. Melbourne love him.
Signed a 4-year extension in 2023. Clearly Melbourne love him. And they will continue to say, as I think Kate Roffey said with Jared in that infamous interview, that he's going nowhere.
I thought it was we love track.
We love track and Gorney and all of that, but this isn't going to go away at all.
No, it will always be there. And
where does it leave Fremantle? So, question without notice: where does it leave Fremantle in their chase for Chad Warner? It's one or the other. They can't.
I was just going to say,
get both.
Do the Dockers need Kozzie Pickett? It's right. I'm no list
every club
guru.
Every club needs Kozzie Pickett. I think he's scratched the surface of how good he can be. And we spoke about those players and the gulf between their best and their worst. I reckon Kozzie Pickett's in that range. Like some of the stuff he can do. I've seen him kick 6 goals in a game, just completely tear the whole game to shreds. Like if you're looking at it, you got that guy's the best player on the ground. But then you see times where he just doesn't touch the footy for a quarter. Why isn't they've tried to put him on ball, centre bounce, which has had minimal effect. So but then you look at his record and you go, geez, for a small forward in his first 4 or 5 years in the game, it stacks up. So every club can use him. Yes, Fremantle can use him, but they can also use Chad Warner.
You're going for Chad
and they
first.
Can't get both.
You're going for Chad first, surely. You have to be. You have to be going for Chad Warner first. So anyway, it's just there's smoke, as you say. Whether there's ever going to be
this
any
is
fire.
As definitive as it's been. Like they're saying essentially, I'm not. They've given themselves a slide out, and I don't think they've even put. Like, it's not as if Sam Edmund is saying this. They haven't put a reporter that is breaking this story. They've said, have told the West Australian. So they've given themselves an out.
A journo's written it, though.
A journo has written it, but he's not the one. I don't think you can pin this story on him. The language he's used, and I'll read the article a bit closer, has told the West Australian. So the journalist is Samantha Rogers, and... It is,
Right, well, then that means
sources have told the West. Yep. So not...
Well, that's her. Sources have told her. That's what that means.
No, I don't know. One more question without notice. Do you think the Indigenous All-Stars camp will be a great recruiting opportunity for clubs. Like the NBA All-Star Weekend, I think some of these superstar players get together and they sort of imagine what it would be like playing with each other. So Kozzie Pickett's going to join this camp. It's Optus Stadium, February 15th. I think the bond that the Indigenous players have together and the opportunity for them to play together will be a bit of an appetizer to think, gee, imagine if we ran out there together. I think this is going to have ramifications.
I think that's a good point.
Competition-wide.
I think absolutely that would happen. And just so Kozzie Pickett, like what Melbourne would never, I can't see a world where they ever entertain a trade.
I would have thought that about Shea Bolton, though.
But Richmond's situation
I know.
always gave it a chance.
Yeah.
So, and if Kozzie is prepared to bang his fist on the table and demand a trade like Shea Bolton did, then maybe, but he's never has. So these utterings are not new from Kozzie Pickett. Melbourne will tell you that he's said a few things, but then at the end of the day, he loves the footy club, he loves his teammates, so he's always settled down and, as we've seen, played some pretty good footy. So the club in this situation with Kozzie, I think, are always going to back themselves in. And unless it got to a stage where he really demanded it, but he hasn't come close to doing that as yet. So anyway, he's picked 12, 2019 draft. He's 23 years of age, and as you say, the ceiling is still.
What draft pick?
Wow.
I mean, he's probably similar.
I'd say.
He's probably similar to the Shea Bolton deal. I reckon.
You're giving up with a projection in mind, aren't you? It's not what he is, but it's what we think he could become.